and welcome back to the channel. So the next few videos over the next few weeks are going to be basically putting the truck back together, putting back all the bits and pieces that have been taken off when they were getting painted. The first bit to go back on is the bumper, and first job on the bumper is to remove the backing paper that was put in place when it was being resprayed. And one of the first things I noticed was just actually how tough the paint is that's been put on. To the point that where they've oversprayed small holes, like where the screws for the number plate goes or the screws for the fog lights go, they completely sealed, to the point that, because even though it was just paint, I still had to drill back through the paint in order to put the holes back in order to get the things like the number plates on. Now the bumper is by no means a light piece of metal. It's quite a heavy chunk of metal. It's still able to be lifted by one person who saw me carry it over, but for putting it onto the truck, always best to have a friend, primarily so that whilst putting it on, if it was to suddenly drop, it would just chip that paint off. So you can see my friend Mike here just giving us a hand, just putting the bumper on, and all we're using is the towing eyes, which are just nylon towing eye covers. We're using those just to locate the bumper in place, ready so that I can now put the bolts in. So there's 4 bolts holding it onto the vehicle, and they are big 19mm bolts that go through. So there's no way this thing is going to fall off. Did still take a little bit of time putting on, so we just time lapse this part. And you'll see as we go along, there'll be quite a few times where I will time lapse the video. But once it's on, it will start to look the piece, start to look the part. But there's still a few bits and pieces that have to go onto the bumper in order to finish it off. You can see now I'm also putting the tread plates on. Now these are designed so that you can step onto the bumper in order to do things with the windscreen, like clean the windscreen. One thing I had noticed, that once I put the bumper on, I had to take the bolts out the top, or the top bolts out, because they actually go through the tread plate. Helps to hold that tread plate on, but that's just one corner. The rest of it is riveted on. So now you can see that I'm just using my new rivet gun, which is a great purchase. The new rivet gun, in order to just rivet those sections back on. And then of course I have to repeat the process on the left hand side. The other noise in the background, I do apologise, that's Mike working on his truck, doing a lot more work than what I'm doing. He was grinding off various bolts, etc. So you will hear that grinder as well every now and again. But yeah, we just rivet on that plate. Then the next thing to do is to get the number plate on, and as I said, I ended up having to re-drill the holes in order to get the screws in place to put the number plate on. But putting the number plate on really seems to finish off the bumper, even though there are still more bits to go on. The number plate just seems to make it. Next thing I put on then was the spotlights, or the fog lights. If you remember, we had to cut the bolts on these ones. They were only small bolts, so that was easy to replace. So we just got some new metal bolts and just put those on as well to get those lights back on. And then the next section that needs to be done after the fog lights were put on are the 2 end caps that go onto the bumper. And again, these just finish it off. So it took a little time, but once the end caps were on, that was the bumper finished. So the next bit to then put on was the radiator grille, which I realise I've done out of sequence here because I've also already put the light surrounds on there as well, which you will see at a later point. But putting the bumper on again, putting the radiator grille on again required some new nuts and bolts, which we put on, and then we put the bonnet on. Only put the first part of the bonnet on. You'll understand why when you see the next video. And there was a comment, or a few comments made last time, about how undignified it was when I was taking the bonnet off. So again, needed a help here, so I've got Mike over again in order to help me lift that bonnet back on. I put some music over this because we did have the radio on at this point, and we were getting very into music, and I don't want to get a copyright strike. So you'll just get to watch the bonnet go back on now. We're just discussing here the clips that hold the bonnet down. Because the bonnet had been bent previously, there had been packing etc. put under the clips in order to compensate for that bend. Because I've now straightened it, we had to take those clips off and re-straighten everything so that it would work better.
It's nice when you see bits go back on.
Yeah.
Makes you feel better.
Feel like getting it. Feel like you're getting somewhere.
Yes, absolutely.
And then the final thing was to just give it a little bit of a wipe down, just to get some of the dust off, just to start to see what the vehicle's gonna hopefully look like.